Yes, welcome into Sports Bet. Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy. Wednesday, May 24th, big game breakdown. It's that time of year again. We got to give you two baseball games. Nothing in the association. Rangers and the Red Sox, Cardinals and the Dodgers. Deep dive. AFC East continues. Miami Dolphins, playoff team. Why is the win total so low? Try to give you another winner with the play of the day as well. Game 4 last night closed 15.5. 215.5 the total. Celtics led by 16. Some juicy payouts. If you had Celtics money line first quarter and first half, looked good. 16-point lead. LeBron's got 4 fouls early. And then Kyrie went to work, Teddy. I was concerned. It looked like the Cavs were going to cover late.
It sure did. I mean, talk about a dead ticket that all of a sudden had signs of life. You know, if you had plus 15.5, plus 15, whatever it was with Boston in this ballgame, you had to be feeling pretty good, and then you had to be sweating the last couple of minutes. But the same stats the Celtics have been struggling with throughout the series, they struggled with again in Game 4. The Cavs, 58-34 advantage, points in the paint. The Cavs, plus 8 on the glass. Cleveland has been getting the shots close to the bucket, and they've been dominating the boards throughout the course of the series, Pauly. That's why they have a 3-1 lead.
Yep, and that was the bad Marcus Smart who continued to jack shots even though it wasn't his night. ESPN Stats and Info, LeBron and Kyrie outscored the Celtics 60-50 after the Celtics took their 16-point lead. That is amazing. Cavs try to close it out Thursday in Beantown. Bad bets. Twins, Orioles over. Look at this move. 8.5 to 9.5, and that was Santana against Bundy. 2-0 final Twins.
Yeah, game falls too with all of that steam. And remember, when we're talking about moving a total, it doesn't take nearly as much to move it across an 8 or across a 10 as it does to cross a 9. 9 is the key number when it comes to MLB totals. So the books will often put juice on 8.5 and then move it to 9 and juice on 9 under. And then, as it moves up, juice on 9 over and then 9.5. I mean, it's a bunch of different moves to get a line from 8.5 to 9.5, a total, I should say, in MLB. It's not just one bevy of wagers. It's a whole bunch of wagers. And honestly, I had no idea what the markets were seeing. You know, maybe the bullpen's worn out after the 21 runs on Monday, but we're talking about two pitchers that have been rolling all year. Santana and Bundy rolled again last night. I mean, better's never had a chance. Santana 7-2 with a 1.80 ERA, became the first pitcher in baseball to throw 2 shutouts this season. And Dylan Bundy right back on track. He had his first non-quality start of the season in his last outing. Well, he got his 8th quality start in 9 tries last night. It wasn't good enough for the win.
All right, bad for the books. 30-cent move on the Rockies. They beat the Phillies again. And every night, Cubs money, 25-cent move on the Cubs. This time it was Lester. They hit 3 bombs off Cueto, who's now 4-4 with a 4.64 ERA.
Yeah, I mean, the books are having a hard time with Philadelphia right now. The Phillies 4-19 in their last 23 ball games. They've been outscored 17-3 in the first 2 games of this series. And when you have a team that's playing like a bottom feeder in May, oftentimes the books struggle to adjust. That's the case with the Colorado Rockies taking all that money yesterday. Look at this tweet from ESPN Stats and Info. The Rockies are 30-17. That's the fastest they've reached 30 wins in franchise history. The previous record, 53 games back in 2000. And I'm telling you, Pauly, all reports out of Colorado are saying the same thing. Bud Black has this team believing. I think the Rockies are in this race for the long haul.
Yeah, bad for the books continues. 25-cent move on the Indians. They love Carrasco. The markets love him. They're 7-2 in his 9 starts. He left with a 7-3 lead. Bullpen made it interesting. They imploded, actually. Indians win by a run.
Yeah, I mean, Carrasco left with a 4-run lead, and then the bullpen gave it away. Cleveland scoring in the 8th to get the go-ahead run against that Cincinnati bullpen. Cincinnati's bullpen is absolutely worn down already, just like it was last year at this time. No team has gotten fewer innings from their starters than per game than the Cincinnati Reds this season. Hence the difficulties with their bullpen work of late. And obviously Cleveland, Chicago, you talked about the Cubs earlier. These are 2 teams that seem to be taking money again and again. The wise guys in love. Well, the wise guys are in love with the Indians. The public's in love with the Cubs. Either way, when they both win on the same night, rarely a good result for the house.
All right, some rule changes in the NFL. You can have the group celebration. You can use the ball as a prop. You can do snow angels now. Screw you, Goodell. But also, the owners voted. The NFL overtime has been shortened from 15 minutes to 10 minutes. People were pissing and moaning last year when we had 2 ties. I'd expect more. What if we had this in place last year?
Well, think about it. Okay, there were 2 ties in the NFL last year. We had Seattle, Arizona in Week 7, a tie that was very dear to my heart as I had the Seahawks plus the points in that game, and the tie worked out fine. And then we had Washington, Cincinnati in Week 8. There were 4 additional games that did not end in ties, all of which were tied at the 10-minute mark. You had the Week 8 game between the Raiders and the Bucks. Derek Carr hit a touchdown pass with less than 2 minutes left in OT to beat Tampa. You had KC against Denver in Week 12. 2 seconds remaining in overtime, the game-winning field goal there. And that was a game in which literally the team that kicked off in overtime still had the ball after 10 minutes of play. So how does the new rule get implemented there? Remember, both teams have to get a possession in the OT if the first possession ends up as a field goal or no points scored. How does that work? I don't know. Week 17, Cleveland and Pittsburgh, an overtime game also that would have resulted in a tie. And then Miami Buffalo in Week 16. In all of these games, yeah, it would have been ties, Pauly. So the thought process for the NFL is we're taking player safety seriously. We can't have guys playing in an overtime game that goes 15 minutes on Sunday and then, in theory, have to play on Thursday night. Well, I appreciate the theory. For a competitive product, Pauly, I'm not a fan. I'm sure you're not either.
The thing that's interesting is we'll see if these teams decide to go up-tempo more in overtime or get more aggressive maybe late in the game as well. Up next, big game breakdown. Cardinals-Dodgers, and we'll get to the Rangers and Red Sox on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on SportsBit, Pauly and Teddy, Betting Insight today. Time for big game breakdown. Go to SBR Odds and Sportsbook Review rating guide. Make sure you're betting with a trustworthy shop out there. Cardinals and the Dodgers, good game. It's Leak against Hill. Dodgers 170 at home, 7.5 the total, over -120. How about the Rich Hill file? 37 years old. His first season was 2005. 9 teams. And number of seasons of 100 innings, 2. With the Red Sox twice. Dodgers and other teams keep saying he can be great if he stays healthy. Will that be the case? Reason why teams keep trying? Since 2014, he's worked 203 innings with a 1.64 ERA. Always with the blister issue. Second game back now off the DL with the blister problems. 1 run over 5 innings against the Giants. 6 strikeouts, no walks. Belt did take him deep. Dodgers lost the game 2-1. Hill, quote, "The ball came out of my hand well, not 100% how I wanted it to, but one mistake, a curveball that kind of hung. My finger was good, so there are no issues there." But as we told you last week, Teddy, and the viewers out there, Mike Leake, steady, pretty good. And after that slow start, the Cardinals have been on fire.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the thing with Hill, he's like the opposite of Mike Leake. Mike Leake has been as consistent as it gets at the MLB level. We showed you a great graphic last week talking about how basically his xFIP was the same every single season since 2010. Well, Leake is 5'10", 170. He's a compact guy. He doesn't have a whole lot of moving parts. Rich Hill is kind of the opposite of that. He's 6'5", he's 220, and the guy's got moving parts all over the place, which is a big factor in why, at 37 years old, the guy's only pitched 100 innings twice in his big league career dating back to 2005. Now, the blister problems have been the biggest issue in L.A., and he did pitch well in that first start coming off the DL, but, he had the one home run that he gave it to Brandon Belt, but the bottom line is Rich Hill, a rock-solid starter when he can eat up innings, but that hasn't always been the case in recent seasons, and certainly hasn't been the case here so far in 2017.
So we don't have to tell you about Leake and who he is, but how about the rest of the Cardinals? 19-10 since the 3-9 start. when they look at the standings, they look up at Milwaukee, and they can also see the Cubs below them. So that's a good motivator every time they wake up, they're ahead of the Cubs. Another thing, where is Jed Yurko's power coming from? Home runs, at-bats, ratio last 162 games. 32 home runs. That's a home run every 7.3 at-bats. That's ahead of Davis and Cruz. No one even in the ballpark with him. Since becoming a member of the Cardinals, 37 home runs and 527 at-bats. The power was underrated because he was playing in Petco where nobody hits home runs.
Yeah, look at those numbers. I mean, we've had a couple of numbers here that stand out like crazy. You know, we talk about Rich Hill, the fact that he has a 1.64 ERA at the big league level since 2014. Nobody talks about that. I mean, they really don't. And Jed Yurko, here's a guy who's hitting better than Chris Davis in terms of home runs per at-bats. It's not even close. I mean, he's lapped the field. Obviously, was a guy who was stuck at Petco Park for a couple of years that have affected his long-term power numbers. But, you know, this is a St. Louis team. Some of this hot streak has been feeding on the weak. You know, they had a stretch of about 2 weeks. They were just playing last-place teams and struggling teams and last-place teams and struggling teams. And they feasted on those guys. But make no mistake about it, that 3-9 start has given Cardinals backers plenty of value over the course of this run. We'll revisit this game when it comes to play of the daytime.
Game number 2, live odds, SBR Odds Sportsbook Review. Check out the rating guide. Rangers, Red Sox, Perez against Sale, Boston at home, 260, 8.5 the total, over minus 115. Markets love Sale, they should. 8 straight games at 10 strikeouts or more. How good has his stuff been? Number 1 in strikeout percentage, 38.6. No one else higher than 32.9. Swinging strike rate, 16.4. That's number 1 too. But, a big but. Sox are only 6-3 in his starts, and he's always laying a big price.
Well, that's just it. I mean, the whole concept here, here's an ace. Here's an ace at the top of his form. I mean, Chris Sale has been as good as any pitcher in baseball this year. When you talk about a guy that struck out 38.6% of the opposing batters, and no one else in the league is even at 33%. I mean, he's lapped the field in strikeout percentage. He's lapped the field in swinging strike rate. What happens when you have that kind of sizzle? You have a value problem. Look at the number here. You know, minus 260. That's all you need to know. If you're playing the Red Sox, and every game that Sale start, here's an ace at the top of his game, pitching perfectly. You know, 9 starts. You bet $100 at all 9 starts, you're up like $130. You know, Red Sox 6-3 in those games. You're not going to get rich betting on pitchers like Chris Sale that attract this type of a price tag, even if he is the biggest ace in all of baseball, even if it's Kershaw or whoever. Hard to make money with guys like Chris Sale because of the prices you're being asked to lay.
How about a round of applause for Jeff Bannister? They were 65-97 before he arrived, then 183 and 141 in 2015-16, despite only a +7 run differential. Now they open 24-22. They had the long winning streak as well that was recently snapped, and they're doing this without Beltre at all, and Hamels on the DL early. But, you know, one thing, too, why he's such a good manager, they got to keep throwing Perez out there. No upside for his career. 30-35 with a 4.23 ERA. That's all he's ever going to be. And it's tough. They have to, you know, it was amazing what's happened the last few years, especially last year. When you look at their rotation and the fact that they were the best record of all time in one-run games, and then, of course, got blitzed early in the playoffs by the Blue Jays.
Sure, I mean, managers don't get a lot of love. When it comes, I mean, sure, managers, I shouldn't say that. Managers without rings don't get a lot of love. They just don't. And, you know, once you get that ring, maybe the betting markets look at you a different way. Opposing teams look at you a different way. But when you're talking about Jeff Bannister and the job he's done with Texas, look, Texas is an average team at best. Okay? They had a winning record last year, a winning record the year before. They've been playing all year without Beltre. Hamels is on the DL. They're throwing out Martin Perez every 5 days, you know, and here they are with the winning record once again. I don't look at Texas as a playoff contender. I don't look at Texas as a team that's likely to light up Sale, but I do look at Jeff Bannister as a manager who is worth something, particularly, Pauly, when you're talking about one-run games.
Up next, deep dive. We continue the AFC East. The Miami Dolphins went to the playoffs, won 10 games. Why is the win total so low? We'll tell you next on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Wrapping it up, deep dive, Pauly and Teddy, AFC East. The champs tomorrow. Today it's the Miami Dolphins. Win total 7 over 150 in some spots, or 7.5. Last year, 10-6 straight up, made the playoffs. 9-7 ATS, 12-4 to the over. They got up to a slow start, and they came on the rest of the season after the slow start behind Gase. Mainstream stats: 25 takeaways, 23 giveaways, +2 margin. Pretty much league average. Offense, 5.8 yards per play. Top 10 in the NFL. 4.5 yards per rush. That's 8th. 7.5 yards per pass. That was 7th. The defense, 88.8 QB rating allowed, middle of the pack. 33 sacks, right around league average. 4.8 yards per rush allowed, tied with the 49ers for dead last. Offensive needs, offensive line, and the defense. Remember, Teddy, this team was night and day. They had all those injuries on the offensive line. When they were healthy, the running game was there and they won games. When the guys were hurt, they couldn't protect, they couldn't run the ball, and they weren't a very good team.
Yeah, I mean, some of that was certainly schedule related, and we'll talk a lot about Miami's schedule in this 2007 preview. But, when you talk about those offensive numbers, remember, Gase came in as a guy, he's an offensive mind, he's a guru. And you look at the numbers, top 10 in yards per play, top quartile, top 8 in yards per rush, top 7 in yards per pass. They were number 9 in sacks allowed. So, I mean, basically, the offense did everything it was supposed to do a season ago. The defense, not so much. The pass defense had problems. The pass rush was mediocre. And against the run, they got eaten up. But in the offseason, what did they want to do? They wanted to shore up the offensive line. They wanted to get the defense together. And the bottom line result from the offseason, they signed a bunch of their own key free agents. They added a couple of guys, and they made some changes in the coaching staff. Let's talk about that here.
Yep, you got Gase, who's back, Clyde Christensen, the OC, who's back, Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator, is head coach with the Broncos now. So now you have a new defensive coordinator the last 3 years in Matt Burke, linebacker coach last year, previously in Detroit and Cincinnati. So that could be something, too, that they have to deal with again. O-line looks pretty good on paper heading to OTAs this week. You have Tunsil and James locked in at left and right tackle. Larson and Bushrod are the front runners at left and right guard. Pouncey at center once he feels comfortable back from rehab. That's something to pay attention to. And so far, so good on Tannehill. As he had the knee injury. He missed the playoff loss of the Steelers. He got hurt late in the season.
Yeah, I mean, one thing Miami's going to have this year that they didn't really have last year, they should have, is a little bit of depth on the offensive line. They've got Craig Urbick, who they took in the draft last year. They have the rookie Isaac Asiata. They have Anthony Steen. So you're talking about a guy, 6 of the 8 key linemen were all with Miami last year. So there's some continuity there. And, Pouncey is a big question mark. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. And there are still concerns about the interior of that offensive line, but at least this Miami team has some options should Pouncey get hurt again in 2017. And you talk about Tannehill, so far so good when it comes to his rehab, but free agent signings, there have been some pretty busy offseasons for the Dolphins in recent years. This past offseason for free agency wasn't one of them, Pauly. A handful of key guys getting signed.
They got an Anthony Fasano, brought him in, tight end from Tennessee. They traded for Julius Thomas, got him from Jacksonville, and they also picked up Timmons, linebacker from the Steelers. Top 3 picks: Charles Harris, pass rushing stud, and a linebacker in McMillan as well. Now, let's get into it. 10-6 last year, made the playoffs. Everyone's in love with their head coach. Why's the win total 7?
Real simple, but just real quick, I just want to go back to the free agents. The duo of Fasano, who was the number 1 non-offensive line run blocker last year, according to some of the advanced metric stats. And then the pass catcher, Julius Thomas, who played under Gase in Denver. That's a nice duo at tight end. You talk about a guy like Lawrence Timmons from Pittsburgh, who should have an immediate impact in terms of leadership. And then in the draft, top 3 picks, you get a pass rushing stud, you get a linebacker, you get a very athletic cornerback in Cordrea Tankersley. Big moves defensively for Miami, hoping to pay dividends. Then we talk about the strength of schedule. Look, last year they were 10-6 in a playoff team. It was all about the schedule. Look at the wins they had last year. They had the Browns. They beat the Jets twice. They beat the Bills twice. They beat the Rams. They beat the Niners. They beat the Chargers. They beat Arizona late when they had no chance. Note the commonality among all those 9 victories. They're coming against teams that didn't make the playoffs. The signature win came against the Steelers at home. And remember, that was a game that Big Ben came back too early. He wasn't right. So the wins they had last year were on the easy side. The schedule they had last year, one of the easiest in the NFL. And oh, by the way, they won just about every close game. 8-2 straight up in games decided by a touchdown or less, including a pair of wins in overtime. Luck was on their side. So here's a team that won 10 games last year, Pauly. You look at the strength of schedule this season, night and day, Paul. Night and day. The strength of schedule jump based on 2017 win totals is the biggest toughness jump in the entire NFL. The AFC East faces the NFC South and the AFC West. Those are 2 tough divisions. You have the Panthers, Falcons, Saints, Bucks, Broncos, Chiefs, Raiders, Chargers. 7 of those 8 teams are all lined at 8 wins or higher. San Diego at 7.5. So no weaklings there. There are 2 extra games at Baltimore and then Tennessee. No easy games there. So you look at the winnable games on Miami's schedule. You say, yeah, they play the Jets twice. They play the Bills twice. And then, that's why this team's lined at 7 or 7.5. Tough slate for Gase and company in 2017. Noticeably tough. Even, we're just talking about preseason and preseason power ratings. In this case, they're meaningful.
I don't think it helps you get the Patriots twice in 17 days either. All right, Patriots tomorrow in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Money time, play of the day. How about this? How about a big dog? Take it away.
Yeah, we haven't taken many bigger dogs in MLB this season here on SportsBit. Here's one we think is live for Wednesday night. And what do you look for first with a big dog? A pitcher that's going to keep his team in the game. Leak has allowed 2 runs or less in 7 of his 8 starts, and only 3 in the other. He is a master of consistency. The Cardinals couldn't hit Clayton Kershaw last night. I think they'll have an easier time against Rich Hill and the bullpen behind him tonight. Let's go for it. Game number 509. Betting number, I should say. 909. Betting number 909. St. Louis plus 160. Take the Cardinals as big dogs in LA.
Looking forward to that, and looking forward to the show tomorrow as we're loaded on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRpicks.com. Thanks for watching. Tell your friends.